There is something somewhat bizarre about organization mascots, people figures and animation characters. You become acquainted with them, care for them and, in the event that you have an excess of time and an overactive youth recovery organ, a hot need to compose fan fiction about them. This rundown incorporates some stunning characters that individuals swear dazzle really exist. Spoiler alert, they don't. Most likely plenty of individuals perusing this will think, obviously, she's a mascot, who thought she was genuine. I mean, everybody knows Betty Crocker isn't genuine, right? Well, that would be the individuals who are perusing and thinking, what? No. Mavis Beacon, the woman who enhances the bundling for mainstream composing programming, is another manufacturer from the corporate world with a racially charged past, like Uncle Ben and Auntie Jemima. Because of the mascot being demonstrated by a Haitian-American woman named Renee L'Esperance, who had been explored from the scent stand at Saks, Fifth Avenue in New York, numerous retailers were hesitant to stock the item. The item has been utilized to show a great many younger students to type since 1987, similarly as the cautious tutelage of Professor Rosetta Stone encouraged me to communicate in Spanish. Very little is thought about the cutting-edge music aggregate The Residents. A lot of legend, speculations and chronicles exist obviously, however none of this answers key inquiries individuals may have, questions like, who are the Residents? Well, we realize that Texan performer Hardy Fox was an establishing part. That is about it. One remarkable colleague is Bavarian arranger and scholar Ensenada, originator of the hypothesis of obscurity and the hypothesis of phonetic organization. Up until this point, so noteworthy. However, much like anything in the all-inclusive universe of The Residents, this man who ought to be a world well-known writer with reams of articles about him, a top-to-bottom bio and possibly a narrative or two graphing his ascent. Not a chance. Some have signed up some coasting, tricky spots and have derived that Ensenada was likely Don Van Villet, otherwise called Captain Beefheart, because of him having lived on Ensenada Drive, California in the late 60s, just as The Residents' early demo tape being sent to a similar record mark official that had marked Captain Beefheart and his magic band, the uncredited inventor, has become a piece of current old stories. Here and there are instances of unheralded innovators, originators, supporters of good thoughts. Douglas Prasher's work on quality sequencing and Brett Weinstein's work on broadened telomeres in lab mice ring a bell. The redemption of the uncredited inventor is a genuinely old figure of speech began by Listverse that is just currently entering our way of life, as observed with the madness encompassing Nikola Tesla's work because of YouTubers unexpectedly making recordings without authorization, may I include, in view of Listverse records from 10 years prior. Nothing epitomizes these marvels in accordance with present-day old stories better than the instance of medical caretaker Lupe Hernandez, assumed designer of alcoholic hand gel, holy person of the COVID outbreak, friend in need of mankind. No doubt, this individual presumably didn't exist. The story goes back to an article in The Guardian dependent on, well, very little aside from some excessively colorful journalistic twists. Note our staggering restriction in not utilizing the expression counterfeit news. Certainly not reality. No one knows who this woman, or man, we aren't sure, was. The means by which to confirm the case, it's every one of the somewhat of a wreck. That, obviously, hasn't halted the Twitterati from requesting Hernandez be perceived, loved and educated about in schools for instance of inventiveness from past the white male authority. Attempt Qian Xiang Wu for an ideal case of a virtuoso non-white lady, you don't need to create one. She designed the bomb coincidentally and was burglarized of a Nobel Prize. This story from 16th century Britain was a genuine zeitgeist-snatching story of a wild Scottish desperado named Sonny Bean and his cavern-abiding, ingrained group of man-eaters. Mr. Bean and his better half lived in a secluded collapse Ayrshire, Scotland. To help his better half, Bean trapped and ransacked explorers in the good countries, killing them and coming back to his significant other with their cash and their carcasses prepared for the pot. Throughout the years, his family developed, his children inbreeding with each other until his tribe had swelled to 48 hungry beans. In the long run, because of the prominent idea of a multitude of 48 man-eaters killing scores of individuals, the king himself was constrained to mediate. James I and 400 officers chased the deadly man-eaters and put them to death in a suitably bloody manner. Or on the other hand, did they? Most likely not, on the grounds that no genuine proof spare some brilliantly emotional, propagandistic enemy of Scottish flyers exist. Being as it is such extraordinary awfulness story, numerous gems have taken impact from the story. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Hills Have Eyes and well-known anime arrangement Attack on Titan all submitted general direction to this story. The universes of promoting, wartime purposeful publicity, writing and old stories have only here and there met so totally as on account of Greek legend Konstantinos Koukidis, the man who kicked the bucket enveloped by his country's honor. When the Nazis had effectively finished their intrusion of Greece, they chose to check their triumph by raising the insignia-embellished flag over the Acropolis in Athens, the structural encapsulation of Greek country. Koukidis, the warrior accused of guarding the flagpole, wouldn't relinquish his obligation and, in the wake of expelling the banner from its elevated spot over the capital, wrapped about himself and bounced from the high Acropolis rock to his great demise. No proof of the occasion, or to be sure of a warrior named Konstantinos Koukidis, exists. The story did anyway end up being a genuine confidence help for a country seriously deprived under the ruthless burden of the German communists. Few chiefs in Hollywood have amassed such a not insignificant rundown of credits as Alan Smithee. From genuine stinkers like Ghost Fever 1987, The Shrimp on the Barbie 1990, and The Birds 2, Land's End 1994, to give some examples of the motion pictures, TV shows, advertisements and music recordings that structure this productive auteur's yield, an accomplishment is a long ways past the capacities of most people. So who the hell is Alan Smithee? Or then again Alan Smithee Jr.? Or then again Alan Von Smithee? Alan Smithee is the alias use when they would prefer not to be credited for a film they've made, generally, in light of the fact that they suck. Unexpectedly, a movie called an Alan Smithee film, Burn Hollywood, Burn, a parody mockumentary featuring Eric Idle has an executive whose name is, tragically, Alan Smithee, ended up being dreadful, snatching 3 Razzie grants at the Golden Raspberries in the year 2000. The movie was horrendous to such an extent that, you got it, Chief Arthur Stiller selected to utilize the scandalous moniker rather than his own name. The Smithee credit was resigned in 2000 by the Directors Guild of America. Australian on-screen character Travis Fimmel's depiction of Ragnar Lothbrok in the gorge commendable hit arrangement Vikings has been portrayed as locks in. For sure it is, as all acceptable fiction is, much as I envision I'm breaking the hearts of droves of Vikings cherishing fanboys and, let's be honest, Ragnar supporting fangirls, this amazing Norse saint is probably not going to have existed. His children did, yet were most likely sired by different other Norsemen. A deadly family in a country setting take accidental visitors to their motel, quiet them into an incorrect conviction that all is well with the world and slaughter them. So goes the account of the Bloody Benders. It isn't the narrative of Agnes McVie, her significant other Jim and brother by marriage Al, despite the fact that it is very comparative. Put something aside for 2 or 3 key contrasts, this story happens in Canada and not in Kansas, there is no whiff of interbreeding and it never happened. Agnes, the story goes, had chosen to sell a 17-year-old young lady she'd hijacked to a nearby excavator. Jim, Agnes' better half, followed the digger the following morning and murdered him, taking his cash. Agnes then harmed her significant other in reprisal. Why? The young lady who was going to be sold into subjugation figured out how to get away and the dance, as is commonly said, was up. The police went to the McVie's lodging and discovered 8 little youngsters cringing in the storm cellar. Great story, thank heavens it never happened. Strap in for this story, people. A clinical analyst is entrusted with the dissection of one Ronald Opus. Creation had left a self-destruction note, recommending this was the reasonable justification of death. He had demonstrated that he was going to bounce from the highest point of his high rise, thus he did. Issue was, he had a firearm-fired injury to the head which the analyst recognized as the genuine reason for death. Little did the perished know, however, a well-being net had been put beneath the windows of the 8th, hence Opus' self-destruction endeavor would have been thwarted had he not wound up shot. Possibly it was murder? Additional proof indicated that the shot was discharged from the 9th-floor condo. They found an older couple there and found that a shot had without a doubt been released out of frustration upon the arrival of Opus passing. The spouse had compromised his significant other with a shotgun, releasing the fire that slaughtered Opus. If you intend to execute an individual, miss and wind up murdering another coincidentally, it is still homicide. Notwithstanding, the old man swore, alongside certification from his significant other, that he had made it a propensity to undermine his better half with the emptied shotgun when they had contentions. Incidental demise at that point? In any case, the decision swung back to kill when an observer affirmed that they had seen the older couple's child stacking the weapon half a month prior to the lethal mishap. The examination found that the mother had removed her child's budgetary help, which addressed thought process concerning why the child stacked the shotgun. He trusted she'd wind up getting murdered when she next had a contention with his dad. The child was Ronald Opus. In an attack of blame at damning his mom to death, he hurled himself from the highest point of the structure, therefore getting hit by the SL.